BCIS IR Chats. We inaugurated the BCIS IR Chats with Dr. Uttam Singha, experienced professional from Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, India, who spoke on water as a source of conflict and cooperation. The first chat commemorated World Water Day, which held on 22nd March 2024. The second BCIS IR Chats will focus on the World Red Cross and Red Crescent Day, which is commemorated on 8th May 2024. On this day, we honor the legacy of Henry Dunant, the pioneering volunteer who founded the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement more than 160 years ago. Above all, on this day, we pay tribute to millions of volunteers and staff who work alongside with the people in need. So, we decided to interview postgraduate student and a young professional from Sri Lanka to get insights on how she began her journey and is continuing her journey of studying, researching, and working in this field of international humanitarian law. Ms Bhagya Samarakoon is a current student of Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights, and she has also completed her LLB degree from Faculty of Law, University of Colombo. So I am sure that her experience will encourage young people from Sri Lanka and also in the region to develop interest in this field. So welcome, Ms. Bhagya. So to start off with, could you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Thank you very much for having me today and sort of giving me this opportunity. So my name is Bhagya Samarakoon, and I'm currently a LLM candidate at the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights in Geneva, Switzerland. And before that, I took oaths as a lawyer in 2022. And before that, I did my undergraduate studies, that's my LLB, at the Faculty of Law in University of Colombo, which is where I first started learning about IHL and international law. So that's who I am.
Okay. I'm a little bit curious about how you got interested in international law, more specifically the international humanitarian law. Would you explain?
Yes. Yeah. I think I first became interested in public international law and also international humanitarian law, which is called IHL, in the third year of at the Faculty of Law at the University of Colombo, which is when we were first exposed to these subjects. And at first, I found learning these subjects a little difficult because so far we had been studying domestic law subjects, which are kind of different. And when in the third year we started learning international law subjects, it was sort of difficult to grasp the concepts and the nuances. And also international law works differently from domestic laws. But then we really did have, brilliant lecturers. So, and they inspired us and challenged us to do better. And I began to like international law very much. And also when it came to IHL, I think I was specifically interested in IHL because of the core values in IHL, sort of like, the concepts like humanity and humanitarianism, humanity and humanitarianism. And also, IHL is a body of law that's focused on protecting people that are affected by armed conflict. And we all know that Sri Lanka, was having a civil war, and I was growing up in that time. So I was also exposed to debates and some of it political that was around at that time. So for me, IHL was also a way of understanding those perspectives, what happened and how could we address violations of law and how we could have regulated what happened during the armed conflict. So I think I was very interested in IHL from that point onwards. And apart from that, I always wanted to do something, useful and meaningful with what I've learned. And that's why I've always sort of gravitated towards more human rights and humanitarian law rather than something else. So I think that also the more people get involved in these bodies of law, uh, the bigger the difference we can make.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Bhagya. I am also curious what compelled you to embark upon doing independent research in this area of international humanitarian law as a undergraduate, as a young scholar, a young researcher in Sri Lanka.
Actually, one thing was that our lecturers were always telling us to do independent research and,
Okay.
do independent research, read, write, publish.
Mm.
And also, I think if you are in a learning institution, you always have these opportunities, call for papers, conferences,
Mm.
workshops, and so on.
Mm.
So I think the first time I published something was when I was actually walking around at the faculty, and there was a notice board which had a notice on it, and it was a call for papers that was published by the Colombo Law Review, and interestingly, it was also asking for student contributions. So at that time, I was very much interested in the rights of sexual minorities and so on. And at that time, there was a case, a judgment by the US Supreme Court. So I really wanted to write about that. So I wrote a small case note about it and I sent it, and my submission got accepted. And that was the first time something got published, something that I had written got published, and I was so excited and happy about it. So I think very important that you start doing your own research and publishing. But also at the same time, one of our lecturers told me, it's very important to start writing. When you're first writing, you have to start writing about something that you are really interested in, because otherwise, if you don't have enthusiasm for it, it's not going to sound all that good. So I think that's something that anyone could keep in mind. And that's something I sort of carried with me throughout.
Yeah, actually, having published your own article is a very exciting one. I have
Yes.
also experienced that. So, just to give more information to our viewers, could you please elaborate, like, how do you find these opportunities to present your ideas as a young scholar or researcher?
So I think it's if you're in a learning institution, I think there's always opportunities, call for papers and so on. But also you can also look on the internet, maybe on LinkedIn, there are notices that are asking for, publications, research proposals, and so on. And also on the websites of some organizations, so if you are following journals. So, depending on what your interest is, what your field is. So, it could be international law, international relations. So, there are specific journals for that, and sometimes these journals have like biannual calls for papers and so on. So, it's just something you need to keep an eye on, and make use of all those opportunities, because I think that's something I try to do and something that I try to do all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would like to ask whether you have any chance for internship opportunities to lead your research. How did you find internship opportunities?
I think actually I first found my very first internship was when I was still when I was still studying at the University of Colombo. And I think one of the factors that helped me get that internship was that I had done independent research before. Because when you're first starting out, the thing most organizations look for is whether you are able to do independent research. And actually, my first internship was at the South Asian Center for Legal Studies. So I already had done some independent research by then. So I think that was actually a good thing and something that, you know, helped me get that internship opportunity. And yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say that having independent research is having research, having done research is the only thing, because I think when it comes to internships, other things also count, like having good grades, and maybe, you know, if you can show that you have a well-rounded profile by by having done volunteering work and but also, yes, independent research also counts.
Would you like to share any experiences that you experienced during your internships?
Actually, during my internships, so currently I'm doing an internship at the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is actually part of my LLM program at the Geneva Academy. And I think it's a very good learning experience, because it's uh, it's where you work under a supervisor. So not only do you get exposed to a whole lot of things that you didn't know about IHL, but you also get an opportunity to discuss all those issues and problems with your supervisor, and maybe you realize some things that you didn't know before. So it's very good exposure. And also it's very challenging, and it's definitely going out of your comfort zone, but I think it's worthwhile.
So you mentioned that you are currently a student of Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights. So how did you learn about this institution? Can you describe the application and scholarship process a little bit?
Yes, actually, I was very lucky in that did I was told about the Geneva Academy by a friend of mine. So I didn't know anything about the Geneva Academy, but then I was, you know, having a conversation with one of my friends about what we were going to do after we finished our LLB, and then she said, maybe you should apply to the Geneva Academy. So I went on their website, I looked at the criteria, the eligibility criteria that they look for in their candidates. And I think that's a very good starting point for anyone who would be interested in. And I sort of, from that point onwards, I actually worked on, you know, ticking all the boxes. So and one thing that they ask for is like a proven interest in IHL and human rights. So even at that point, I had done a lot of work in human rights in terms of, you know, volunteering work and, you know, research and so on. But then I also, after I graduated, when I worked also, I was working at an organization that was working on human rights and transitional justice matters. So that was also good experience for me, because you know, rather than, because when you are sort of how do I say this? When you plan what you want to do, it's easy for you to get more experience in that particular field and then build up on that experience. But I mean, it's not necessarily to say that you need to decide what you want to do at a very early age, because you don't need to do that. But I mean, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So like human rights, humanitarian law, and I was also interested in transitional justice, and that's specifically because our country needs transitional justice. So that's why I was working on those issues. And that I think was also, I think, something that helped me get selected to the Geneva Academy. So the Geneva Academy, if has an application process that's mainly done online through their website. So I think they open their applications around January, February. And the good thing about the Geneva Academy for students like us is that they give full scholarships to non-EU students. That's students coming from non-European Union countries. And so the main thing that you need to prove is that you are a deserving student and that you are, otherwise unable to financially support yourself, which is, mostly the case for us. And other than that, they look for your academic transcripts, whether you have done volunteering work, uh, and whether you have done, work in, human rights areas, and so on. So, and also there is actually an opportunity for you to write a motivation letter, which I think is very important because that's where you really need to make yourself stand out. And one thing is you need to make sure that your motivation letter is authentic and it actually says why you are doing what you are doing and why you want to study at the Geneva Academy or follow this, body of law. So, but also I think the motivation letter is a very good opportunity to make your application stand out because like the Geneva Academy receives a lot of our applications. So it's easy to get lost among those.
Yeah. So also like as since you are studying in Geneva, can you share the experience of being in Geneva as a researcher from the Global South?
Yeah, actually, I before coming here, so I had never been to a European country before, and one thing I wish I had known about Geneva was how much French would have been useful because in day-to-day life, French, if I had known French, it would have been very useful. So maybe if someone is interested in applying, I would say just, brush up on your French. And that's one thing. But other than that, on a more serious note, I think you rarely see scholars from the global south or authors, lecturers from the global south. But also, I think that is changing for the better. And I think that's an issue because you don't have a lot of people from the global south who are engaged in this field because I mean it could be due to a lot of reasons. But I think if we had more people coming into this field from the global south, then we would also have more experts, authors, lecturers who represent the global south and our views and our perspectives also in this field. So I mean I think that's one of my experiences and yeah.
Actually, there might be among our viewers, there might be some scholars who want to learn international humanitarian law in Sri Lanka. So, what would be the advices that you would like to give these young Sri Lankan scholars that are interested in learning international humanitarian law?
Actually, I forgot to mention something before. So,
Yeah.
when I was studying IHL at the faculty, I got the opportunity to participate at the John Pictet competition on IHL. The Pictet competition is one of the most prestigious competitions on IHL in the world. And we were very kindly sponsored and also trained by the ICRC delegation in Sri Lanka. And this was in March 2020, so just before the pandemic before the pandemic happened. And that was actually a challenge because we were actually told at one point that we had the choice not to go because the pandemic had started spreading, people had started wearing masks, we had to go through airports. But then we decided that after all that training, we still needed to take this opportunity. And we ended up getting into the semi-finals of that competition. So, and actually one of our teammates won the prize for the best speaker at the competition. And so I would say that if anyone's interested, like any student is interested in IHL, that competition, and if is able to take part in that competition is really great because it teaches you, unlike a traditional moot court, to take the law out of the books. So you are given these simulations and you are given a role, and you have to apply the law, but depending on the circumstances, and maybe you are a ICRC delegate, maybe you are a civil society member, and you have to, depending on what you want, you have to apply the law and get what you want. So it's all to protect civilians or something like that. And it was a very interesting competition and a very useful learning experience. But in terms of advice, I would say that, this is something I use for myself. So in case it is helpful, I would say that you need to ask yourself why you decided to choose international humanitarian law, and then always keep the answer to that in your sight when things become difficult. So, because that's what keeps you going.
Yeah. So I'm sure the information that you provided must be useful help for our viewers. So
I hope so.
As a final question, I would like to know what are your future goals? What are your future plans?
Actually, I would definitely like to work in the humanitarian field. So maybe the ICRC. And I would also like to get some field experience because so far what I've learned is straight from the books. So, just to realize how you apply it, in real life and in actual situations. And but other than that, I don't really have set plans. But it's definitely going to be human rights, humanitarian law. That's the field.
Okay, Bhagya. So that's very exciting field to work in, and we wish you all the very best for your future dreams and goals. We wish you all the very best, and thank you very much for joining with us. I'm sure that your views and information would be a great help for our viewers. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.